Well, the city of Chicago was crawling with mobsters during the 1920s and 30s. One of the most famous crimes was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. WSBT-22's Katlin Connin is here tonight. And Katlin, there's a local connection to that crime.
The guns used in the massacre were found in Stevensville. Berrien County was a popular vacation destination for gangsters and their families, and if those guns hadn't made it to our area, we might have never known who was involved in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Prohibition started in 1920. Retired Lieutenant Mike Klein of the Berrien County Sheriff's Office has spent a lot of time studying that era and the notorious gangsters that came out of it.
Al Capone and Bugs Moran.
The two men and their gangs were mortal enemies. Moran had come close to killing Capone one time too many, so Capone's lieutenants armored up with Thompson submachine guns.
They're fully automatic, about 850 rounds a minute, which is very fast and even modern-day firearms. They fire a .45 Colt ACP, which is a big, heavy bullet, okay, and it's intended for one thing and one thing only: killing men.
Then Capone's men made a plan to dress like cops and take out Moran.
And it went off pretty much with military precision, with the exception of that when it was all done, they didn't get Bugs Moran.
Moran may have gotten away, but Capone's men got off scot-free too. That's because men like Fred Killer Burke did the job for them.
He was kind of a contract hitman.
Burke was such a pro, he disappeared after the massacre. Kelsey Kernut with the Berrien County Historical Association says this area was Al Capone's playground.
The 20s, he would come over with several of his associates to vacation. This is where they would come and just relax.
They didn't make trouble. In fact, they made friends with the locals.
They tipped very well. A lot of times people who waited on them made more money than they would in a general week or even a month.
Fred Burke followed suit.
It was easy for him to just create a quiet life here where no one really knew him or paid attention to him.
Burke may have never been noticed if he hadn't made a big mistake 10 months after the massacre.
He's been drinking heavily. He has a fender bender with a guy by the name of Forrest Cool.
Cool called the cops and Officer Charles Skelly pulled Burke over.
Burke rolls his window down, produces a Colt .45 pistol, pumps 2 rounds into Officer Skelly's chest, and as he's fallen, he hits him with a 3rd round, which ends up later on being a fatal round into his back.
The response was immediate. Skelly identified the shooter as Fred Killer Burke. Soon, Berrien County Sheriff's deputies swarmed Burke's bungalow. It's now a Coldwell Banker real estate office, but 90 years ago, it was a criminal's dream.
They had a lot of little cubbies in the old craftsman homes.
Over the years, Chris Hamilton and the others who work here have found plenty of Burke's hidey holes.
He could have hidden bows, he could have hidden money. There could have been other guns there. There could just be just about anything your imagination can think of.
But it was this closet where officers found a jackpot.
There was an actual space that was meant more for storage than anything that goes from the outside wall to the inside wall.
And we find Fred Burke's toolkit to the tune of a couple Thompson submachine guns, a couple rifles, thousands of rounds of ammunition, bulletproof vests, tear gas grenades, hand grenades, nitroglycerin, disguises.
That arsenal, specifically the Tommy guns, tied Burke to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Officers used ballistic forensics to prove it. The new science examined microscopic tool marks in the barrels of the gun,
which are as identical to the bullet and shell casings and firing pin hits as your fingerprints are to you and me.
The slaying of Officer Skelly and this new evidence sealed Fred Killer Burke's notoriety. He was nowhere to be found until March of '31, more than 2 years after the massacre. Now the most wanted man in America, Burke was finally arrested in the Show Me State.
The prosecutor down in Missouri looked at all of it and said Berrien County has the most airtight case against him.
Burke stood trial, but it had nothing to do with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It was simply justice for Officer Skelly.
During the trial, they asked him, they said, "Why did you shoot Officer Skelly?" He says, "I'd have never shot that young man if I hadn't been drinking." Because like I said, he was a pro. He was a professional contract killer. And he made mistakes that day.
The St. Valentine's Day Massacre is still one of the oldest unsolved murder mysteries in American history. It's 90 years old today. Burke was sentenced to life and never opened his mouth about who else was involved, and we might not have even known that he was involved if those guns hadn't been found in Berrien County.
Wow, you know, and events like these have really changed how police operate, how they do their work.
Oh, absolutely. Ballistic forensics became a lot more popular, but law enforcement started to get a lot more organized, like the crime organizations they were trying to fight. They did a lot more training, and they also worked a lot better across state lines.
Fascinating. Katlin, thank you.